Now, moving on to coach hirings. We have received kind of more recent news that Dan Quinn is going to be the Commanders' new head coach. Of course, one of your guys, Rob. Um, what do you think of this? Do you think this is a good move for the Cowboys, good move for the Commanders, bad move for both teams, a little bit of both? What is it?
Yeah, it's definitely not great for the Cowboys because they have a really terrible track record when it comes to hiring defensive coordinators. Since 2000, Dan Quinn is probably the first good defensive coordinator we've had. He was super successful for the past 2 years. Obviously, slipped up a little bit this year, but there were a lot of injuries on defense, and some people say that's the reason why. We lost our starting cornerback, both our starting linebackers, and you could kind of see maybe why the defensive failures this year weren't entirely on Dan Quinn. So I'm definitely not happy that he's leaving. I think the worst thing though is that with him, he's bringing Joe Witt Jr. It was like this defensive genius that we've had on our staff for a little while now. He's like I think he was our linebackers coach this year, maybe our secondary coach. I'm not entirely, no, he's not our secondary coach. He's our linebackers coach. There was a lot of optimism in the Cowboys building that he would be the defensive coordinator to succeed Dan Quinn. But he loves Dan Quinn so much, he's going with Dan Quinn to Washington to be his
Wow.
defensive coordinator there, betraying the Cowboys for their division rival.
Wow.
Um, I think the Commanders made a brilliant decision going to get Dan Quinn. I think they made a mistake in not hiring Mike MacDonald before the Seahawks did. But with what they had left, I think Dan Quinn was a great choice because he knows how to run a football team. He knows how to create a winning culture. I think he's brought a great guy with him to be their defensive coordinator. And I've seen a lot of rumors that Cliff Kingsbury is going to be going to the Commanders as their new offensive coordinator, which I think is a good role for Klings. Is it Kingsbury or Kingsbury? I don't remember.
I think
Regardless,
it's Kingsbury. And actually,
Kingsbury.
since that report, Kingsbury's actually saying that he's still not going to come back to the NFL. So he's reported to have said that he's done
Oh,
with
okay.
looking at offensive coordinator positions, at least for this year. And who knows if he changes his mind, but absolutely that would be a dynamic duo right there with the OC and DC in Washington. But yeah, it looks like it won't be Cliff Kingsbury. I think it's Kingsbury, not Cliff's. Yeah, whatever it is. But yeah,
Yeah, no, I think the Commanders are going to have a great coaching staff. They have a ton of draft capital to rebuild with, ton of cap space to rebuild with. I think Dan Quinn can certainly build a winning team that's a lot more scary than any Washington team has been for the Cowboys in a long time. So I'm not looking forward to that. I've seen a lot of rumors the Cowboys are looking at Ron Rivera as a potential replacement, as well as Mike Zimmer. I am fully aboard the Mike Zimmer train. He was a great defensive coordinator pretty much every year he was one. Obviously, his head coaching career didn't work out with Minnesota, but that was just because they had a lot of moving pieces with their personnel. I don't think that was because of his defensive coaching. He also has been a very effective coach against Shanahan style offenses, which has been the Cowboys' Achilles heel the past 3 years. So I'm fully on board with bringing in Mike Zimmer, whereas I'm fully opposed to Ron Rivera, who has been a very bad defensive coordinator no matter where he's been. So I do not want Ron Rivera. Mike Zimmer all the way is where I would be hoping the Cowboys look. But they have a track record of making bad decisions at that spot, so I'm not too optimistic.
there has been in the last couple days, especially after this release that Dan Quinn's going to be moving on from the Cowboys, that Jerry Jones's relationship with Bill Belichick, there could be some things in the work that since Belichick, was not hired as a head coach this offseason, that he could be brought back as the potential new defensive coordinator for Dallas moving forward. Do you think that that is you know, a point that could be something that actually does happen, or do you think that's just kind of people wanting Belichick, but nothing really in the works?
Now, we said this a full week ago. We both agreed that Bill Belichick as defensive coordinator of the Cowboys was certainly a possibility. And now, seeing how things have played out, I still think it's in play. Bill has a lot of pride, and there's a part of me that thinks he wouldn't want to be a defensive coordinator anywhere. But at the same time, being the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, is a lot different than being a defensive coordinator on any other team. And more than that, with Mike McCarthy kind of being in a lame duck year, if Belichick takes over that defense and it does really well, that would perfectly position him to take over as the head coach if McCarthy ends up being fired after this season. So I think there's some advantages that come with being the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys this year specifically that you wouldn't have in any other position. So I would not be surprised if Bill Belichick decides he wants to coach this year. He takes the defensive coordinator job of the Dallas Cowboys because, like you said, Jerry Jones has emphatically stated how much he would love to work with Bill Belichick. They're close friends, like personally outside of football related stuff. So if Bill Belichick wants that job, I don't think there'd be any hesitation on the Cowboys side from offering it to him. It's just a matter of if Bill is willing to accept the defensive coordinator position after being, the greatest head coach of all time for the past 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's also been some rumors that Rivera's actually could go to the Eagles and be their defensive coordinator. Um, how do you feel about that potentiality?
They hired Vic Fangio as their defensive coordinator last week, so that's
Oh,
not.
I meant offensive coordinator. Did they? Oh, they already hired their offensive coordinator, didn't
They
they?
hired Kellen Moore, former
That's
Cowboys
right.
coordinator,
That's
as
right.
their new offensive coordinator, which I am not happy about because he was a great play caller for most of the season when he was here in Dallas. It's just in the playoffs, his play calling would get a little wonky. So, hopefully that carries over with him to Philadelphia and they, make some ridiculous calls like running it up the middle with 13 seconds left, down a touchdown in the fourth quarter.
Of
I would
course.
love to see Philadelphia do some stuff like that in the playoffs.
So last year they got rid of their offensive coordinator because of failures in the playoffs. This year it seems like Dan Quinn is leaving. Not necessarily the blame's on him, but he's now leaving the organization. Do you see this future upcoming season to be maybe they aren't removing the right people in the organization that's been stopping them from playoff success? Or do you think that the potential moving on of Dan Quinn could actually benefit the Cowboys making a postseason push to a championship or even more to the Super
The,
Bowl?
de- the departure of Dan Quinn could benefit the Cowboys, certainly if they find the right guy to replace him. If they find a guy who knows how to stop the Kyle Shanahan offense, which that was Dan Quinn's one weakness. His defenses could not stop Shanahan style offenses. If they find a guy who can consistently do that and stop a team like the Packers or the 49ers from destroying us in the playoffs or in the regular season for that matter, that would be a huge improvement. Do I have the confidence in the Cowboys to go out and actually find the guy? No, not even a little bit, because they have never, since I became a fan of them, actually spent amount of time or resources on bringing in a quality defensive coordinator. So I fully expect Ron Rivera to be named the defensive coordinator of the Cowboys just because that would be so in line with what they normally do. Although I have my fingers crossed for Mike Zimmer. But yeah, if the Cowboys don't win it all next year, Mike McCarthy's gone. He's in the last year of his contract. There's not going to be a renewal if they don't win it all next year. That's his only chance at keeping his job. And on one hand, I'm happy that they have such a high bar for him. But on the other hand, putting that much pressure on him, like every single game he's coaching for his job, that doesn't seem like a recipe for success. Most instances I can remember of this, it always ends up with that coach not even making it through the entire next season because his team just comes out so flat. They collapse and he ends up getting fired like halfway through. And I'm very worried that that's what's going to happen with McCarthy. The Cowboys have a lot of talent and they should be in the playoffs again. They should be in contention to win the division again. They should win the division, to be honestly, considering who's they're competing with them for it. But you never know when you have a coaching situation like this where it's a lame duck year and all the pressure is riding on that coach to win the Super Bowl or get fired. So
Yeah.
we'll see. I mean, this is probably McCarthy's last year, but if he manages to go out next year and win it all, then I'm more than happy for him to receive the biggest extension in the history of NFL head coaches. So
Yeah. Interesting. Bill Belichick, the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Has a little ring
certainly,
to it.
yeah,
One of our close friends would be probably in utter pain for the rest of his life if that ever happened, as he is a devout Patriots fan and more so Bill Belichick lover. So, but if that happens, yeah, he will be devastated. But interesting, interesting. Yeah. Well, it would be fascinating if it seems like Washington and Dallas are going to do a little swap where they they trade Quinn for Rivera. But very interesting.
Want that. You
Yeah.
have no idea how badly I don't want that. Please,
Well,
no.
believe in Jerry Jones, I guess, is my best
Oh man,
advice for you.
I don't want to believe in Jerry Jones anymore. I don't know if you saw this, but a report came out this past Wednesday that Jerry Jones' plan was to fire Mike McCarthy after the playoff loss to the Packers and replace him with Jason Witten, the Cowboys
Oh,
type legend who had never coached in the NFL before. He's only ever coached high school football. He was going to take him from a high school football coach to an NFL head coach in one offseason. He had to be talked out of that. So just hearing that concerns me a lot about the future of the team.
yeah, that's kind of concerning, I would say. It's a little,
Just a little bit,
yeah,
yeah.
just a little bit. Yeah, nothing to like, get crazy about, but
No, no,
definitely
there's nothing to worry about. It's all under control.
no. Of course, of course.
There's no concern on my end. I'm so confident they're gonna just make all the right decisions about coaches.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, kind of speaking about coaches, it wasn't just Dan Quinn that was named a coach. Actually, the Panthers, Falcons, and Seahawks, they all have hired their future head coaches for this upcoming season, leaving Belichick and Vrabel out of jobs, which is very interesting on for both of those people's career as coaches in the NFL. But the Panthers hired Dave Canales. I think that's how you pronounce it. Rob, what do you think about this hire? Was this a good hire for the Panthers, or did the Panthers mess up this like they did the first round pick with Bryce Young? Yes, I said that.
Well, I think this is a brilliant hire for Carolina because Canales has a history of developing quarterbacks and having them produce like the best season of their career underneath him. I think he was with the Rams when Jared Goff was there, right? He helped Jared Goff have one of the better seasons of his career. And then he was with the Buccaneers for Baker Mayfield's best season of his career. He just kind of built like a reputation as someone who can build a quarterback into having the best season of their career. And if Carolina has any chance of salvaging this whole Bryce Young situation, if he's going to turn into like a really good NFL starter someday, I think this is the perfect guy to lead that effort. Granted, they will probably not have a lot of capital to build around him with. They're going to be missing their first round pick this year. They don't have anyone good at wide receiver still. So they're going to have to find a way to replenish the talent on that roster to give, Young a chance. But with that head coach, I think they position themselves the best way possible to see a lot of advancement from their quarterback in the future.
Yeah, and I think instead of Jared Goff and the Rams, you were thinking about Geno Smith and the Seahawks because that's where he was
Oh,
at
you're right. You're
prior.
right.
But
Yeah.
other than that, yeah, absolutely, I agree. I think this is a good hire. I do think the pick for Bryce Young was not the best idea. And we've kind of seen that play out this past season. But hey, there may still be hope. We've seen quarterbacks go through rough rookie seasons and turn into great players. Peyton Manning, some of these other guys like that. So if they're going to help this kid succeed in the NFL, I think this was a brilliant hire as well. Not only did you see him bring out the best in Geno Smith in his entire career and even Baker Mayfield and back-to-back years. Could he do that with Bryce Young? Could we see this Panthers team actually moving the direction that everyone wanted to see them even this past season? Um, it's going to be something that, if they keep him around, I think that it's a positive direction the Panthers can go in. Um, the lack of draft capital and the lack of resources, I think, as you mentioned, Rob, is going to be a big telltale sign. I don't think that, this next year for the Panthers is going to be the year, just with, some of those pieces missing. But I do think that we can see a potential in Bryce Young making a leap and being a better quarterback than what we've seen so far in the league his rookie year.
for sure. I think it was definitely a great hire. It was a lot better than the hire, I think, by the Atlanta Falcons of Raheem Morris. That I have a huge issue with. He has a pretty bad track record being head coach because he was the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons a few years ago after Dan Quinn was fired. He has a lot of coaching experience. I think he was the head coach of a few other teams. I don't know why, with all the young, like exciting talent out there, you would go hire a retread who has never really been successful anywhere. I mean, if you were going to look for an experienced head coaching candidate, I feel like, Dan Quinn or Mike Vrabel would have been a much better direction to go. So that was probably the one hiring of the bunch that really confused me the most.
Yeah, I do not really like this pick either that the Falcons went with. I just for some reason this just doesn't feel like this was the best, you know, direction that the Falcons could have gone in with the way their franchise is right now. And I think that that's something that is worth maybe taking a little bit more time. I feel like there were better candidates on this roster, or on in the world of like available coaches in terms of coming in. Mike Vrabel could have been a great pick. I know they were in talks with Bill Belichick for a little bit. They had him come for two interviews. I don't know if that was in person or online. I forget if that was the case, if it was like more like Zoom meeting wise, but still, um, to go with this guy, I just don't know. I guess the only saving factor is that he he was with the Falcons when they made their kind of big um, playoff run, when they went all the way to the Super Bowl and then lost drastically to the Patriots. So there could be some talent there where he was the wide receivers coach and assistant head coach. So he could have had some kind of hand in that kind of, um, you know, management in terms of the game, in terms of the team leading, that team to the Super Bowl. So maybe there's some of that consideration. But I think you're right, Rob. I think that there's so much else that's on his resume of failures and not great coaching positions that just, maybe he'll wow us, but this just doesn't seem like the pick that the Falcons should have gone for in order to better their team next season. Um, and I think that that's we'll see it moving forward. But the Falcons have a lot of holes they need to fix on their team, anyways. And I think quarterback is going to be a big one for them because I don't think Desmond Ritter is going to be it, and I don't think that Taylor Heineke is going to be it. So I would actually not even be surprised if they even pick up a quarterback in the draft. But speaking of a better coach hiring, um, Mike MacDonald went to the Seahawks. And I know that there was some initial thought process that Vrabel was actually going to go to Seattle. There were some of those kind of like leaked of like, oh, this would be a great fit, blah, 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 blah. But they actually have settled on Mike MacDonald. And I even, was reading that the Seahawks were high on this guy. And the only reason that it didn't get done sooner was, of course, because the Ravens were still in the playoffs. As soon as, of course, the Ravens did lose to the Chiefs in the conference championship round, it was really not that big of a surprise that they hired this guy, as he was a top candidate in terms of coaching positions for head coach forward. So do you think this was a good pick, Rob, that the
Yeah,
Seahawks made?
absolutely. I think this was the best head coaching candidate in this entire cycle, even better than Bill Belichick or Mike Vrabel. I mean, the way Mike McDonald ran that defense in Baltimore was just so impressive. The way he was able to generate so much pressure and so many sacks with, just a bunch of regular guys rushing the passer. It's genius. Like really, there's no other way to describe it. He is one of the greatest football minds in the game right now. He's clearly a great leader. He's young, he's going to be able to connect with the team really well. He has a lot of energy. I'm not sure why he wasn't the first candidate hired. I mean, I know the Ravens were still in the playoffs and some of these guys were hired, but like, I don't know why he wasn't the number one guy on every team's board. I don't know
Yeah.
why all the other teams hired people before he was even available. It just I don't know why you wouldn't wait for a guy like that. So I'm definitely very impressed by the Seahawks managing to land him and bring him in as their new head coach.
Absolutely. And we could even, see a resurgence of the Legion of Boom. Um, you know, uh, and that's, something that was has it been a decade? Is it been a decade now, really,
As
for that? Well, either way, the reemergence of that would be huge. Of course, he's a huge defensive minded guy. Um, you know, led the Michigan Wolverines to a Big Ten conference championship, all that type of stuff. Was one of the top 10 national defenses in college football that year, and then he was able to show what he could do on a professional level with the Ravens this past year, and so that kind of ability in creating a top tier defense can go a long way, especially in Seattle, where it has seemed like their defense has struggled more in the past kind of season or so. Um, it with the resurgence of a potential superstar type defense in terms of playability and caliber and execution on the field, the Seahawks already have a lot of offensive weapons that can just easily complement that. So with the resurgence of their defense being better under MacDonald, I think this hire was really a good one, and it could even push the Seahawks into battling for the NFC West. Even with the 49ers, maybe not all the way, maybe not yet, but at least it's a step in the right direction for contending for that division.
for sure, absolutely, this was the best thing they could have done for their team.
Thank you for joining us on the Redzone Rodeo podcast.
If you like football and you like having fun, come on down and subscribe or check out our channel for more videos like this one.
No ifs, ands, or buts. This is the best place for your football news.